Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another Breaking Brad video where I react to breaking news and viral moments. We've got to talk today about Dave Chappelle, the stand-up comedian who I am a big fan of. Of course, I have lots of disagreements with him on various things, but I've always thought he's very funny, one of the only actually funny stand-up comedians in my opinion. And then I like the way that he'll poke at sacred cows and doesn't really care, and he'll roast everybody. He'll punch left, he'll punch right, he'll punch himself. I defended him quite vocally when he was attacked and people tried to cancel him for making jokes about trans people and trans issues. I pointed out that I really didn't think any of it was malicious, and I thought he actually made some good points. But I do have to criticize Dave Chappelle today because he just spoke at or did a set rather, at a comedy festival in Saudi Arabia, and he made a couple statements that I just cannot get on board with, that are getting a lot of buzz online, and I want to go over with you guys. So buckle up, subscribe, like, yada, 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 and let's take a look at this reporting. This is reporting from The Hollywood Reporter. Dave Chappelle criticizes free speech in America at Saudi Arabia Comedy Festival. It's easier to talk here than it is in America, the comedian told an audience at the Riyadh Comedy Festival. So you guys probably already see why I'm scratching my head. He's at a comedy festival in Saudi Arabia, the Middle Eastern theocratic kingdom, with blasphemy laws where they murder journalists, and he's saying it's easier to talk there than in America. I don't think we're perfect, trust me, but we still do have a First Amendment and pretty robust legal protections for free speech that don't remotely compare to the state of affairs in Saudi Arabia. And there are a couple twists to this that make the comment even more bizarre. But first, let's just keep reading here from this reporting. Dave Chappelle criticized the status of free speech in the United States while on stage at the Riyadh Comedy Festival in Saudi Arabia. The comedian was one of more than 50 performers participating in the event, which has come under fire for being held in a country which has been accused of human rights violations and an oppressive regime. This one, I'm not necessarily going to criticize him for, because Dave Chappelle is not one of those like woke scolds, but I do think that if you are a more left-wing comedian who's constantly talking about oppression and victimhood and how terrible America is, but then you jump and go dance at the opportunity to cash out and go perform in Saudi Arabia, yeah, I would judge you a little bit for that, but I'm not sure that necessarily applies to Dave. Anyway, here's what he said. Right now in America, they say if you talk about Charlie Kirk that you'll get canceled, Chappelle told an audience of 6,000, according to the New York Times. I don't know if that's true, but I'm going to find out. He then added, it's easier to talk here than it is in America. I'm genuinely just not sure what he means. People are talking about Charlie Kirk and saying terrible things about him all the time, and they're not getting any punishment or sanction for it, really. I mean, if you literally openly support terrorism, people might try to get you fired, or yeah, there might be some backlash, but if you just say he's a terrible person, especially as a public figure or a comedian, I don't really think anything's going to happen to you. I've seen lots of journalists and people do it. I don't know. I'm not sure what he's going for there, but it's certainly not easier to talk in Saudi Arabia than America. Because one thing I can promise you is you could say whatever you want about Charlie Kirk and nobody's going to arrest you. Whereas you say some things about maybe some of the people in power there, and wait and see how that goes. Chappelle later noted he feared returning to the United States because, quote, they're going to do something to me so that I can't say what I want to say. I don't know what he's talking about. No, they're not. Like, they're just not, though. It's just strange. Anyway, one local audience member, referencing ABC's brief suspension of Jimmy Kimmel Live, reportedly marveled that it was, quote, surprising to hear Chappelle talk about Charlie Kirk in Riyadh when just recently America canceled Jimmy Kimmel doing the same. Well, not quite. That's complicated, but Jimmy Kimmel's back on air, and it was spreading basically false information about Charlie Kirk's killer that got a lot of backlash, and that's a very specific situation because they have that, of course, they have an FCC license for them to air Jimmy Kimmel's show. So it just wouldn't apply to a stand-up comic like Chappelle. Now, here's where the reporting points out some of the contradictions that I highlighted already. Given Chappelle is obviously a comedian, anything he says on stage can arguably fall under the rubric of, well, he was just kidding, but his comments are, at the very least, rather ironic. In Saudi Arabia, media outlets are licensed by the government, and there's a long list of prohibited speech, from anything that inflames public opinion against the state to promoting any non-Islamic religious expression or speech that supports activist causes. For example, in 2022, a student was sentenced to 34 years in prison for retweeting women's rights activists on X. She was later given a reduced sentence amid global outcry. Here's where things get really spicy or hypocritical, I would say. Even the comedy festival had purported speech restrictions, with one comedian posting a list of deal terms for appearing at the event, which included forbidding any criticism of religion or the Saudi royals. One comedian, Tim Dillon, says he was disinvited to attend the event for an unearthed joke he previously made about Saudi Arabia, which arguably sends the message that if you wish to be invited to the Riyadh Comedy Festival in the future, you better not make jokes about the country even when you're back home. So yeah, I want to home in on this for a moment. If this is actually true, and if Dave Chappelle signed some kind of agreement saying that in order to perform, and I'm sure he was very well compensated at this comedy festival in Saudi Arabia, he wouldn't make any jokes about religion or the royal family, then it takes some audacity to then say you're more free to speak there than you are in America. That's insane. No, you are not. And there's also something hypocritical and I think inconsistent with your reputation of being a button pusher, a boundary pusher, of being kind of, a politically incorrect maverick comedian who will say the hard truths, with agreeing to go to any festival that would put these kinds of restrictions on you. I think the right thing to do would be to pass up the check and say, no, I'm not going to agree to not make jokes about the royal family or the religion, the state religion in this country. I don't know. I would never agree to that kind of self-censorship or just censorship in order to perform or speak somewhere, even if a big fat check was coming to it. And I just think it's not like you're broke and you need the money. I'm sure you're a very wealthy dude. I'm sure you're doing just fine. Okay. So I find that disappointing. I think that's a form of selling out. And if you're going to do it, that's one thing. But to then do it and go there and trash America as if somehow the place you're visiting isn't exponentially worse on all of these questions and issues than America is kind of diabolical. Love you, Dave, but this one is an L for me, for sure. He's not the only comedian catching flack over this event. Bill Burr, who is kind of an unhinged lefty at this point, is also coming under some fire, so they report. Comics attending the Riyadh Comedy Festival have come under fire by some for comedy washing the Saudi regime in return for big payouts. Dillon says he was offered $375,000, which gives a sense of the potential baseline. Dang, that's a lot of money. I guess, at least if you're going to sell out, get your bag. Comedian Bill Burr, after performing at the show's opening night on Friday, defended the project on his podcast, suggesting the cultural exchange could have unexpected benefits. Yeah, I just have no respect for this guy who cosplays as like a left-wing progressive truth teller. I stand up for people. I stand up against the elites. But then you go and dance like a monkey for the Saudi Arabian regime to get your bag, and you agree to self-censor yourself and muzzle yourself while you're doing it. But then you come back here and tell us how evil and terrible Trump and Elon Musk are and pop off about other things. I don't know, man. I find that to be really contemptible and just sad. Like, are people really that desperate for cash? These are already rich guys. I don't know. There's just a level of greed there that I just don't understand. But what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments. Will you still be enjoying Dave Chappelle or Bill Burr after this? Personally, I already don't like Bill Burr, but I'll still tune into Dave Chappelle. I'll still appreciate his future work, but I am going to call him out when he does something I think is wrong or says some things that I think are wrong. And that's what I'm doing here. So let me know what you think in the comments. Hit the like button, subscribe, yada, yada, yada. Oh, and if you're interested in more of my thoughts on longer form, check out the Brad vs. Everyone podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts, linked in the description. I cover internet insanity and social media trends and chaos, all from an independent perspective. With that, guys, we'll talk again real soon.